It is playoff time. After an 82-game regular season, the most exciting time of the year has finally arrived. The action gets started this weekend, 4 games on Saturday, 4 more on Sunday. No better place than BetSafe to get down. I've gone through all the games, picked out my favorites. I've decided to involve myself in one of the Saturday games and 2 of the Sunday games. Let's go ahead and get to them. Why don't we start in Toronto, where the Raptors host the Milwaukee Bucks on Saturday. Toronto a 7-point favorite at BetSafe, 201.5 the total here. Now the Raptors have really been playing well over these past few weeks. They've won 4 straight, 12-2 in their last 14 games. Their leader, Kyle Lowry, has been back with the team for a couple of weeks now, playing great basketball. The Raptors once again have one of the best backcourts in the Eastern Conference with Lowry and DeMar DeRozan. But you know, they really improved defensively over the course of the year. And a lot had to do with their acquisitions. Of course, they got Serge Ibaka in a trade with the Orlando Magic and P.J. Tucker in a trade with the Phoenix Suns. Both those guys have played a major role here over the second half of the season. And the Raptors actually 4th in the NBA in points per possession allowed since the All-Star break. So they've been an elite defensive team here over the past month or two. They're facing the Milwaukee Bucks, who have been struggling a bit coming into these playoffs. The Bucks just 2-4 in their last 6 games. Now they're led, of course, by Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek freak, a guy who does it all. He became the only player in NBA history to finish the regular season ranked in the top 20 in points, rebounds, assists, blocks, and steals. That is a remarkable stat. And keep in mind, Antetokounmpo just 22 years old, a 6'11 point guard. This guy certainly earns his nickname. However, he's not an elite offensive player, and these Bucks really struggle to score from time to time. As a matter of fact, they have produced 94 points or fewer in 5 straight games heading into these playoffs. And we mentioned the Raptors have been playing great defensively of late. Raptors also a top 10 team on the offensive side. Look, I know 7 points, a big number here to give a tough Milwaukee team that has really outperformed expectations all season. And I do expect Milwaukee to steal a game or 2 in this series. Just don't think it's going to happen in Game 1. I think the Raptors outclass the Bucks here. As we mentioned, Toronto playing great basketball heading into this postseason, 12-2 in their last 14 games. We know the Air Canada Centre is going to be rocking. The Raptors traditionally a great home team, especially in the playoffs. I think they win this game and win it comfortably. I'm on Toronto -7. Moving on now to one of the Sunday games. What about the Atlanta Hawks going on the road to face the Washington Wizards? This is the 4-5 matchup in the Eastern Conference. The Wizards a 4.5 point favorite at BetSafe, 211 the total in this game. Now, it was an excellent season for the Wizards. As a matter of fact, it was the first time since 1979 that they picked up a division title. However, they haven't been playing their best basketball over the past 6 or 8 weeks, just 8-9 over their last 17 games. They're a young team, though, and a lot of people feel like they're going to be able to turn it on, dial up the intensity for these playoffs, and maybe that's true. Maybe that's going to happen. They certainly have a lot of offensive talent, one of the very best backcourts in the NBA in John Wall and Bradley Beal. But they're facing a tough Atlanta team here. This Hawks team really struggled, about 6 or 8 weeks ago. They really hit a rough patch. But they turned it on and were playing good basketball here over these past few weeks. They did lose the final game of the regular season to Indiana, but they're resting most of their starters. Prior to that, the Hawks had won 4 straight and 6 of 7. And even though they weren't a particularly good offensive team throughout the season, as a matter of fact, they finished 26th in the NBA in offensive efficiency. They steadily got better on that side of the ball throughout the year. Picking up Ersan Ilyasova really helped out midseason, gave them some more outside shooting. And you look at this Hawks team, they really seem to buy into Mike Budenholzer's system. He experimented with the rotation a little bit, gave Tim Hardaway some more minutes than Hardaway was getting earlier in the season. And the Hawks playing their best offensive basketball of the season here over these past couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, like we said, despite finishing in the bottom 5 in the league in offensive efficiency, you look at their last few games, their last 4 wins to be specific, the Hawks averaging 116 points per game in their last 4 wins. And we know they're good defensively. Top 10 in the NBA in both points allowed and opponent's field goal percentage. The Wizards, meanwhile, bottom 10 in the league in both those categories. Sometimes this Washington team gets a little lazy on the defensive end. You know, I really think this series is going to be a long one. I think it's going to go 6 or 7 games. And I think the deciding factor is going to be how Atlanta's perimeter defenders, guys like Dennis Schroeder, Kent Bazemore, Thabo Sefolosha, Tim Hardaway, Taurean Prince, how those guys can match up with Wall and Bradley Beal. Can they make life difficult for Wall and Beal? I think they can, and I give the Hawks a good shot at pulling the upset in this series. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to go into Washington and win Game 1, but I do expect them to give the Wizards a tough game here. I think this could be a bit of a wake-up call for a Washington team that has really coasted over the past 6 or 8 weeks, and I think the Hawks a good-looking bet as a 4.5-point dog. We mentioned this Atlanta team, very good defensively, and they've been playing their best offensive basketball of the season here lately. I think they have a chance to go in and steal one here in Game 1. I like the Hawks plus 4.5. Final game I'll be involved in on this opening weekend of the NBA playoffs. What about the Sunday night game? The Oklahoma City Thunder going to Houston to face the Rockets. Houston a 7.5-point favorite at BetSafe, 228.5 the total here. I think this is probably the marquee round 1 series just because it features Russell Westbrook and James Harden, probably the 2 favorites for the MVP award, though frankly, if anybody other than Westbrook wins it, I believe it's criminal. I understand the arguments for James Harden, for Kawhi Leonard, even for LeBron James, but Russell Westbrook becoming the first player in 55 years to average a triple-double. If someone had told you prior to this season that somebody was going to average a triple-double, I mean, I remember Oscar Robertson, of course, was the last player to do it, and people through the years have said, hey, 1 year Oscar Robertson averaged a triple-double, and it's one of those things you almost laugh about, like Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game. You think, well, that could never happen in the modern NBA. Back then a great player was just able to dominate. Well, it did happen in the modern NBA. It happened this season, and not only did Russell Westbrook average a triple-double, he led the NBA in scoring. Let me tell you, folks, me, you, who's ever watching this out there, none of us will ever see another season like Russell Westbrook's put together here. We'll never see another individual season like this in our lifetimes. I think I'm safe saying that. However, one player does not a team make, and Oklahoma City is an underdog here for a reason. The Thunder really treading water over these past couple of weeks, just 6-5 in their last 11 games. And as good as Westbrook is, we know this Thunder team not particularly good on the defensive side. Bottom half of the league in both points allowed and opponent's field goal percentage, and that is bad news when you are facing this Houston Rockets team because only the Golden State Warriors have been better than Houston offensively this season. Mike D'Antoni's system has been a perfect fit for James Harden and all the shooters they have. Guys like Eric Gordon, Ryan Anderson, Lewis Williams has been a good fit since coming over from the LA Lakers. The Rockets, second in the NBA in points scored this season, first in three-pointers made. They averaged 14.4 threes per game. And in their 4 games against OKC, they averaged 115 points per game, including 137. They put 137 on this Thunder team back on March 26th, won that game 137-125. And I think we're going to see a lot of results like that in this series. High-scoring games going back and forth. And OKC is just not going to have the firepower in the end. Now look, Westbrook's a great player, and I have no doubt he'll be able to lead his team to a win or 2 in this series. But game 1 here in Houston, we know the Thunder weren't particularly good on the road this season. There were 12 games over 500 on the year, but just 19-22 on the road. Houston, meanwhile, won 30 games at home. I think the Rockets are going to pour it on here. OKC might keep it interesting for 2 or 3 quarters, but in the end, they're just not going to be able to keep up, I don't believe. You need to play defense. You need to be a good perimeter defensive team, I believe, to stay with this Rockets team and at least hold them to something reasonable. And I don't think the Thunder are going to do it. Wouldn't surprise me at all if we saw something just like we saw a couple of weeks ago when these teams met, with the Rockets pouring 137 points on them. Again, I think this will be competitive for 2 or 3 quarters, but I do believe the Rockets will pull out and win it comfortably. I like Houston minus 7.5 there. There you have it, folks. Those are my thoughts for this NBA opening weekend. Hopefully we can carry on the momentum that we ended the regular season with, hitting all 3 of our bets on Wednesday night, the final night of the regular season. I like Toronto minus 7 against Milwaukee on Saturday. I like the Atlanta Hawks plus 4.5 against the Washington Wizards on Sunday. And in the nightcap on Sunday, I like the Houston Rockets to cover that 7.5-point number against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Folks, I wish you best of luck no matter what you decide to do this weekend, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interests. Enjoy the games. I know I will.